Thank you all for coming here. My name is Penny Wright. Many of you are familiar faces, and some of you are not, but we welcome all of you and invite all of you to come to other programs if you like, take a copy of our newsletter, and let us get to know you and see you. But tonight we're delighted to have an author, an environmentalist, and orangutan expert named Leif Cocks, and I will tell you just a little bit about him before we get started. The Orangutan Project was established in 1998 by founder and world-renowned orangutan expert Leif Cocks as a result of his almost 30-year career with orangutans. Leif is a passionate campaigner for these animals and has been president of the Orangutan Project since its inception. Leif's years in the field have earned him the respect within the conservation field, and he has been a key player in developing conservation plans for orangutans and influencing positive change for their protection and survival. This includes the first ever successful reintroduction of the zoo-born orangutan. This result has given the Orangutan Project world standing in conservation. A small population biologist and curator by trade, Leif has several academic qualifications, including a Master's of Science. He lectures at universities, is a seasoned public speaker, and has published several papers on orangutans in peer-reviewed journals. He is also the author of the books Orangutans and Their Battle for Survival, which was published in 2002, and Amazon bestseller, Orangutans, My Cousins, My Friends, published in 2016, A Journey to Understand and Save the Population of the Forest. He is currently, and he is many things, so pay attention here, a technical advisor for PT Alam Bukit Tikapula, which is a company leasing and protecting rainforests, the president of International Elephant Project, president of International Tiger Project, and vice president of Orangutan Republic Foundation, and on the advisory board for Forest, Nature, and Environment of Aceh, which is a province in the north of Sumatra. In respect to his professional, animal, human, and financial management skills, he has been the longest-standing member of the Australian Species Management Program, a quarantine-approved assessor, zoo husbandry advisor, zoo accreditation officer, UN GRASP in-country point of contact, an international species coordinator, international stud bookkeeper, and the chair of a World Aquarium and Zoo Association Global Conservation Program. Please welcome Leif Cocks.
Thank you, Vic. How's that? Better?
A little.
Little higher? How's that? Sounds good? Cool. Well, thank you for coming on this beautiful,
July.
no, the place.
Southampton.
Hamptons. I'm staying with my friend Lauren in Huntington, so it's very close, so I'm getting mixed up. So it's a beautiful place. We came up here earlier and spent the afternoon, so thank you for having us. And I just want to take you on perhaps an unusual journey, and I guess what I've learned in conservation, learned about orangutans, and I guess more importantly for you, maybe even more interesting, what I've learned about us as humans and what we need to do to make the changes in the world that are necessary for our survival, and most of all, survival of our grandchildren. But I could just introduce to you is, first of all, just tell you what is the Orangutan Project. And so we have sister projects, the Elephant and Tiger projects. We're part of joint organisations including Wildlife Asia, which I founded, which we're doing a lot of work with the Karen indigenous communities in Myanmar to protect their forests. We have a joint foundation for use. We have a joint company, Pulu, and a joint company, PD Hope, which we're leasing land. We partner with all those organisations and we fund those. So it's a real eclectic mix. I call ourselves, we're part of what I call the Third Industrial Revolution. I don't know if anyone's ever heard about that. It's quite an interesting concept. We're actually in the middle of it, so if you're an entrepreneur, you want to kind of get grasp what that means. But basically it means for us is we don't have an office, we don't pay electricity, everyone works at home or we work on our laptops as in moving all our files on Google Drive, all our meetings on Google Hangouts, and we don't seek to create what I call legal fictions. Legal fictions are things such as companies, foundations, and countries. People spend their lives to support these things, but they actually don't exist. And that's the correct term, I'm not making it up, they're actual legal fictions. What's real is people. What's real is you. What's real is orangutan. What's real is trees. And we don't care about the orangutan project. We partner with anybody and everybody in a shared economy to achieve most efficiently the outcome. And of course, my ultimate dream one day, the orangutan project will close down, because I don't want to leave a world when I die that the orangutans are endangered and need help. I want to leave a world where they're safe, secure populations. So I hope one day everything I've created in the orangutan project is unnecessary. And that's how we see ourselves. Just quickly, most of you probably don't know me. I do lots of things and all over the world. But my most privileged time and my most time I spent my time is working with these beautiful orangutans. They're persons, self-aware persons such as us who share our planet. They're the second most intelligent being on the planet to us. And that's defined by all the studies. And unfortunately they've been destroyed and murdered in the most horrible way into extinction. But I will do whatever it takes. So whether it's giving talks, writing books, meetings, managing companies, leasing land, negotiation agreements, whatever it takes, because it's not about me, it's about the outcome. I just happen to have the privilege of getting to know these beautiful beings, at a first-hand basis in my journey to save them in the rainforest. I'll talk more about that later. So I just want to give you quickly the broad summary of the problem we're facing. This is a pie chart of the biomass of all land mammals on Earth today. That little black sliver, that's all the wild mammals. All the elephants, all the tigers, all the bears, all the orangutans, all the gorillas, all the antelope and the bison, and the rest of it's taken up by humans, well, us, and the animals that we keep for the sole purpose is of slaughtering the pleasure of the taste of that flesh. And so that's obviously a direct result of obviously us, our population, and our desire to eat the flesh of the beings that share our planet. And so there's very little left for wildlife. And we're really fighting over the scraps. And the Orangutan Project and other organisations, we actually only have a few years to turn this around, because there's no vast wilderness left. And so we've got a few years to turn it around to have enough viable ecosystems for the megafauna such as elephants, tigers and orangutans to survive. After that, sure, in 100 years' time will there be an orangutan? Yes, in a zoo somewhere or in a small isolated population. But they'll eventually go extinct because the populations are too small to be viable. And so they'll just be an artifact to go to extinction. And so we only have a few years to turn it around and make sure that after we leave this earth, that they have the possibility of continuing on. Now, I'd probably characterise, I've spent the first 20 years of my life turning people off conservation. I thought science could solve the problems of biodiversity loss, climate change, ecosystem collapse and cruelty, which is the things driving the extinction But I was wrong. And of course, what most important thing I've learned is facts don't change people's minds. And I'll explore that more in detail as we go. The root of the problem is cognitive dissonance, apathy born of despair, selfish greed born of unhappiness. And therefore, it's only the cultural inner change and the change in our communities and societies that will be able to affect meaningful change. And I can sit here all night and write about facts and figures, and convincing peer-reviewed journal figures, and I won't change one person at one thing. And that's what I've learned. So I talk in a very different way now, in hope to affect meaningful change for all of us and into the future. Now, to understand where I'm coming from with those statements is, I just want to take you back into our evolution and understand who we are and what we are. First humans started appearing as we know it about 200 or 300,000 years ago. First early humans. The agricultural revolution only occurred less than 12,000 years ago, and the industrial revolution less than 200 years ago. So what does that mean? It actually means, from an evolutionary biologist point of view, the agricultural and industrial revolutions are of insignificant time period to make meaningful changes in how we think and behave. So we have to understand us, doesn't make sense, we have to understand that we're really hunters and gatherers, who are trying to adapt and survive in a whole new world. And we think and we make decisions based on what was successful for us as hunters and gatherers. And so, unfortunately, this has been meant because we have the technology and influence to destroy our whole planet, but we've got a tribal mind, which is not suitable for solving those kinds of problems. And I'll explain that more. Now, one of the important things that happened at the agricultural revolution is we had to destroy feminine power. And this happened because, and I'll just quickly explain, and I'll just take you through the evolutionary kind of journey. Now, we adapt to the environment in two ways. Natural selection, I think everyone's probably familiar with that. We have children and all genetically a little bit different, and nature selects which of our children are most adapted to every changing environment. But us and orangutans and elephants, intelligent persons, we also adapt to the environment in a far more significant way, and that's through culture, by learning and passing culture from generation to generation. And you always know the animals adapt to the environment by culture because we're not born with a lot of instinct, like basically hardwired brains. We're born with vacant brains, does that make sense? And helpless, like a baby orangutan, a human baby. And our mothers predominantly program our brains, does that make sense, with the culture to make us uniquely adapted to the particular environment. Now, it's true in orangutans and true in humans. There's a bias on how natural selection and cultural development is passed on and how we adapt using those two key methods. Now, mostly it's with, let's say, the orangutans, it's the males where natural selection occurs because you don't want the females to die. Because you want them to be very stable and survive, because, for example, in orangutans, if you only kill 1% of the females a year, the population spirals to extinction. And in humans, that's why we don't send women to war, because basically, from a tribal perspective, that's killing yourself off, right? And in fact, you can lose half the men in the population and be okay. In fact, and we know what through evolutionary biology, both with orangutans and humans, it's female mate selection which determines which males pass on the genes to the next generation. And with reproduction, with females, it's a very expensive exercise. It's the most dangerous thing that you can do. And you're investing many years into very few infants. For a male orangutan or male human, it's a very cheap thing to do. I've got lots of it and I'm willing to spread it around, and very little consequences from it. And so, which means the females have to be extremely selective. In fact, so selective, each one of us sitting in this room today only has half the male ancestors than we do have female ancestors. So that basically means the women over from millennia have looked at half of us men and go, we really love you as a friend, you're a really nice guy. Me and the rest of the girls have got together and we don't think your genes should be passed on to the next generation. So how do we get those genes in? And the fundamental way we can get the genes into the, females make us see us as attractive and get it actively stupid. So stupidity is our best adaptation. I'll quickly explain that. Anyone know what a peacock is? Yeah. Have you ever seen a peahen though? Right, it's a little timid brown bird, right? And it's in the rainforest and it just leaks around, right? And that's really good because there's lots of things that would love to eat a peacock or peahen in the forest. There's always tigers and right. Okay, that makes sense. Now switch to the peacock. Brightly coloured, a tail 3 times long, which is flashing rays, call it right? You basically say, eat me now, baby, you take me, And you go, well, this is, from a survival point of view, this is the most stupidest thing you can do. But what he's telling that female peahen is, despite all my stupid behaviour, I'm still alive, right? And therefore my genes must be good. And of course we can't grow big peacock feathers, although we can dress up fancy when we go out to the pub. But mainly the way we as human males adapt to the environment or become attractive is to, extreme sports, danger, does it make sense? This is why, except for times like World War II and that sort of stuff, pretty much young men kill themselves up equally quickly back here in America than they do probably in Vietnam or Korea, right? Because what we wanted, we naturally wanted high-risk behaviour, doesn't make sense, and go through that. And I know when I was a young man, I always carried a skateboard with me everywhere I went because I could turn any safe environment into a dangerous environment immediately. It was very satisfying for a young man. Now, on the opposite side, women who were taking care of the young infants, they were passing on culture from generation to generation. And masculine power is about competition, and short-term goals. We go out and hunt something, grab something, and we compete. We're competing our genes against each other with high-risk, stupid behavior in order to become successful. And us dying is probably not a big problem because half of us are not going to be saved by the females anyway. Now, women's power is about cohesion and long-term. That's why even in conservation, the key to conservation is always women. Because conservation is a long-term process and it's about cohesion and sharing. Does that make sense? It's not about competition short-term, which is what you do to exploit the environment. So we had these women passing on culture generation to generation, and we had there's 2 key adaptations which has made us so successful. One is gay men, and 2 is grandmothers. I haven't got time to talk to you about gay men, but I'll talk to you about grandmothers. And what happened thousands of years ago, and this doesn't happen with gorillas, orangutans, and chimpanzees. At one stage, women stopped reproducing halfway through their lives. This would seem to be a bad option, doesn't make sense, because you're not producing any more offspring. But what they did is they concentrated onto the survival of their grandchildren, and they became the cultural matriarchs, passing on the culture from generation to generation, and actually made the tribe's genes and the granddaughter genes far more successful. This is one of the key adaptations that made us extremely successful hunter-gatherers. And we had these 2 power, a bit like the Senate and the lower house, does that make sense? You had these 2 separate power things which kept us in check, doesn't it? Yeah? And that's how we evolved. We evolved to think with masculine, feminine thinking, does that make sense? To make the appropriate decisions. But when the agricultural revolution came upon us, we no longer had communal ownership of land, and we had very little possessions. And as a man, if we owned land and we didn't make sure that our offspring inherits that land, that's the survival of your genes or not. Land meant you would prosper, no land meant you were out of the gene pool. And so what happened is that the males got together and destroyed the female power. Does that make sense? In order to secure their reproductive success. And this is basically set an imbalance, does that make sense, within our society, which we see today. Because we see all the multinationals, as an example, which are destroying the environment. It's not poor people destroying the environment, it's big, rich companies. Yeah. In fact, what we see in Sumatra, say, is the big multinationals take the majority of the land, and the elephants and orangutans and the poor people are fighting and killing each other over the scraps. Yeah, and we see that. But it's not that these people who run multinationals are horrible people. They just meld chimpanzees in suits with no female power. Does that make sense? No cohesion, no caring, no heart, just intellect. And they're making short-term competitive decisions against the other tribes, i.e. other corporations, without that check. And so we need to fundamentally change that. Yeah? We need to have more feminine power, does that make sense? Empowerment within our society, and get back to our tribal situation where we were before in order to effect meaningful change. Because us men only are working with half a brain. Yeah? Because we need the other half. Have you heard the saying, behind every great man and great woman? It's really because you need that counterbalanced thinking in order to effect change. I just want to give one point of clarity there, is I'm not talking about women's power. I'm talking about feminine power. Because we're so enamored with power being necessarily a masculine attribute. Does that make sense? Women who go into power, or we portray in power, take up the guise of masculinity. Like Marvel comics and the movies will say, look, this is wonderful, we're showing empowered women. There's Wonder Woman punching Nazis in the face in a skimpy outfit, And, I'm a bloke, I can watch beautiful women punching Nazis all day. However, that's masculine power, does that make sense? It's not feminine power. And that's what we really need to bring back into our institutional decision making in order for us to survive. The other problem that we've encountered is we've grown up in tribes of 120, 150, and we've defined everything out of that as other. So, and unfortunately, as I've expressed, is we can affect the whole planet from our tribes, and affect the whole planet. Does that make sense? And we consider it other, so we can dismiss their suffering easily. It's not because we're horrible people, not because people who are head of these tribes are any way different to us. They're just working on a tribal level. Have you ever noticed you can keep electing politicians, nothing changes for you? It seems like they don't care. Well, it's probably true they don't. You're outside of their tribe. The tribe does really well. I'm not saying there's not great leaders that come along once every generation, like Martin Luther King, Nelson Mandela, Mahatma Gandhi, who transcend the tribal thinking, the tribal brain, and have love and compassion and concern for the wider group. But by and large, that's how we act. Unfortunately, and this is one of the big problems I have, a really nice man came up to me in Vancouver and he said, I run a charity for hospitals, and health, and a lot of rich people donate, to this, which is absolutely fantastic. And actually 97% of charity money goes to the health and children causes. And he says, to the last man, everyone donates because my brother got sick, or my niece got sick, or my in-laws got sick. Doesn't make sense? Or I donate to all the people who donate to Central Park in New York because it's their view. Doesn't make sense? Yeah? So generosity, doesn't make sense, is only applying, doesn't make sense, within what we consider our tribe, however we define that. And when we're talking about, I'm saying, 20 to 30% of global warming, which is destroying this country, is caused from destroying the orangutan's home. Yeah, it's just something that, it's just, well, that's other, doesn't make sense. I can understand what you're saying, Leif, but I can't care, doesn't make sense. And to give and to care and act is not an intellectual issue. It first comes from the heart. Yeah? It has to come from the heart. And that's a big divide, doesn't make sense, in between what we have to do to save our planet, yeah? And what we're naturally reared up and evolved to react to. And of course, what we're designed to do is to immediate action as other. Doesn't make sense? There's a tiger over there, it's other than us, doesn't make sense, it's immediate short term, we know how to deal with that stuff. When something like global warming was abstract, it's sometime in the future, sort of now, and if we are doing it, our brains is just not geared up to that. Imagine if it got announced tomorrow that Donald Trump has found out that all global warming has come from North Korea as a plot to destroy the Western governments. You imagine how quickly we solve the problem. 2 weeks' time, we'll have it solved. Yeah. But not because that's necessarily easy to solve, but it's a problem that we can grasp around very, very easily. The other issue is that, unfortunately, we're related to the chimpanzee. And chimpanzees, I love chimpanzees, I've worked with chimpanzees, and one of the most beautiful moments I've had in my life has been with chimpanzees. And just like us, empathy, compassion, love, they're wonderful. But they're also capable of the most horrors. They will seek other chimpanzees, other tribes, and murder them, systematically destroy a tribe. Murder them, tear off the genitals, tear off their faces, wanting to destroy them. Yeah? And humans do this too. Yeah? If you don't believe America or my nationality, Australians, don't commit war crimes, not true. Yeah. Because you get a group of men in those situations, they will commit war crimes. Because they're basically a bunch of male chimpanzees get together, yeah, and that's what will happen. This is different from the orangutan. The orangutan that I call a more noble form of person. It's a shame we haven't become more closely related to the orangutan. Now I'll give you this example. Now we've probably killed over 1 million orangutans as we slowly wipe them out all the way from southern China to the remnant populations on the islands of Borneo and Sumatra. Millions, and burning them alive and shedding them, shooting their eyes out, and killing them in the most horrific way possible. Now, an orangutan is at least 7 times stronger than a human, and the males of the canine the same size as a tiger. And not in one recorded history, not zoo or sanctuary or in the wild, have we ever seen or heard of an orangutan ever killing human being. They just don't have that kill switch. They don't have the capacity to look at another person, look at you, and see you of no value. Sure, they might fight you and bite you to get you away, if that makes sense, but they will never want to actually destroy you like we can as human beings and a close relative to chimpanzees. And we have to overcome, does that make sense, that nature in order to survive. Now, the other issue is when we're involved in a tribe, it's always been far more important for us to agree than to be right. Being right, it's not a good solution to surviving in the tribe. Because your group cohesion, does that make sense? The group cohesion within the group and the trust in the leader is so important for that tribe to survive. Right? And if that breaks down, the tribe breaks down and the survival breaks down. So it doesn't matter if you say, well, we go for that valley, there's less dangers and more food. Right? You're better off staying with the tribe if the tribe believes this valley has less danger and more food. Yeah? And this is why whistleblowers, even if a whistleblower is doing the right thing and it's in the public interest, that makes sense, and exposing a crime, they're always destroyed. The reason being is there's this visceral reaction in leadership, that makes sense. It's no longer logical. They have to be destroyed because on the tribal level, that whistleblower is literally threatening the survival of the tribe. Of course, these days, it's the opposite. the whistleblower could be saving us, exposing us to things that are happening, yeah, that we need to make immediate change. But our tribal nature is to destroy the whistleblower. And so, and then we call it also, have you heard of Stockholm Syndrome? Yeah, you know, we all start believing, we're like little cults. You know, those religious cults where we all go, oh, look at those wackos, you know, they believe such weird things, you know. And we think they're stupid, doesn't make sense, or emotionally vulnerable. Possibly, but actually mainly they're just like us. Does that make sense? Yeah, because our brain is set up to wanting to agree, does that make sense? And believe the narrative of our community and of our partner, yeah? Whether it's right or wrong. And if anyone says something different, there's anger. Does that make sense? There's immediate anger that comes up. And that's why it's so hard to change people's minds with facts. If it's going against the cultural norms, yeah? And we just got to realise is we're all living in a cult. Because when we're in the cult, does it make sense? Whatever that is, yeah? Of our society, our community and religion, we can't see outside of it. And when somebody comes along and challenges that, well, yeah, we get this visceral reaction. You stop this guy, don't listen, yeah, block the fact. And we're very good at blocking facts. In fact, a lot of our brain is set up to block facts. And interesting enough, we think we know a lot of information, but we don't. Actually, most of what we think we know, we don't know. I know that sounds strange, I haven't got time to explain it all, but this memory stick, that probably is twice as much information on this memory stick than every one of our brains. We don't know very much. And we have to exclude a lot to survive. And that's how the brains have evolved. For example, if you drove a car down the street on the way home and you noticed, doesn't make sense, and took in everything, you would just crash the car, overload information. So your brain tells you to exclude the things which are irrelevant in order for you to drive that car successfully. And it's the same how to get through the rainforest and to survive, you have to exclude a lot of things which are irrelevant to your survival and to your group. This is why if anybody here rides a motorbike? No motorbike riders? But if you're a motorbike rider, you would know that you'll be watching a car and they'll look straight at you and pull out right in front of you. You think, my God, half the country is trying to kill me off. And you think, well, why didn't you see me? Because in their minds, they've trained their minds to look at lights, pedestrians, cars, trucks, and they haven't registered in their mind motorbikes because they're too uncommon, doesn't make sense to register for many people. So, what is the basic issue let's say, we're facing in Sumatra and Borneo? Well, we know that the forest has been destroyed for unsustainable forms of monoculture, such as palm oil, pulp paper, and rubber. Now, all monoculture is unsustainable, right? So you can't have sustainable palm oil because because it's a monoculture. So therefore, if you say it, you actually don't understand what the word sustainable means. That's just not how nature works. And so, but what we also discovered was joint companies to restore the land and work with local communities to save the forest. Is we can make probably more money per hectare per year out of an intact rainforest. And you go, well, why are we destroying the forest then? Well, we're destroying the forest for it's that masculine thinking. So we are the profits for the many of the intact forest is reduced to the profits of the few. Yeah? The profits for generations to come, for our grandchildren and great-grandchildren, is reduced to the profits of the 5-year business plan. Right? And so basically they're compressing profit in the group of people and in time in order to maximize the short-term aggressive outcome competing against other companies, yeah? Which is, and to the last T, those companies would be filled with male chimpanzees, yeah? And they're not horrible people, they're not dreadful people, they're like us, yeah? Yeah. Acting how they've evolved to act without that feminine bouncing attitude. So, I just want to talk about right action here and understanding. And it's linked to the feminine and masculine, but it goes even deeper than that. You cannot effectively communicate or understand anyone without empathy. So I can sit here and listen to your words and intellectually understand it, but I can't truly understand it. Our intellect and our knowledge hits a limit, right? But if I have empathy for you, if I dare say love for you, and can see behind your eyes, I can then truly understand what you're saying. And if you really truly want somebody to listen to you, what's the first thing you have to do? Listen to them. Does that make sense? Yeah. There's no chance. No one wants like this. You listen to them, understand them, look behind their eyes, then there's at least a chance, yeah, that they will listen to your point of view in the same way. The other aspect of it is, I don't know if I watched Fox News the other day. A few people shaking heads, might be, but what you see on there is these people who give opinions. They're the opinion pieces. Does that make sense? And they're often totally uneducated in the area. That makes sense? And it's almost this culture is, my opinion is equal to your fact. And it's not. Does that make sense? I can have an opinion on a lot of things I don't know, but if you have facts on that, you always trump me. And that's a kind of a weird culture that I've seen develop lately. So in short, heart without head ends in hypocrisy. And the best example I can give is, if I kill and eat a pig tonight, normal. If I kill and eat your dog, psychopath. If I don't do either, radical vegan hippie. Right? And so it's not that the people who love their dog, and we appalled if anyone heard that dog, but then can eat a bacon sandwich at the same time. It's not that they're not loving, caring, beautiful people. It's they lack the intellect, doesn't make sense, in that situation. They can't see outside of their vision that a similar being to the dog is suffering, doesn't make sense, and life can be taken for that pleasure. So, yeah, it's heart, but no intellect. The opposite is head without heart is in brutality. And the best example I've got for this is communism. And a lot of intellectuals love communism. It's, it's a utopian society where everyone is equal. Does that make sense? And it sounds really good. But it's a philosophy with no heart. If you go to a communist country, the brutalist architecture, you get that press just looking at the architecture and even doing anything else there. And what it is, and literally tens of millions of people died in the 20th century for this brutal ideology. That makes sense? Very smart, very intelligent, it's ideology, but brutality. And when I'm talking about tens of millions of people, I'm not talking about them tens of millions of fighting the Americans or something. No, I'm talking about their own people. That's how many of their own, tens of millions of people in China and Russia died trying to create this perfect society. And they had no heart, yeah? And it ended up to be totally brutal. But most of all, I've discovered in my journey is the external world is a reflection of our inner world. And you can't change the world unless we reform ourselves. Now, I see it so many times in the conservation world, and we fall down. Because if I'm happy inside, if I find that happiness was inside myself, unfortunately the truth is it may be difficult to find happiness within yourself, but it's impossible outside yourself. But if you take time to find it within yourself, you want the world to be happy. Right? If you don't find it and you're miserable inside yourself, no matter you try to be a big conservationist or welfare person, you end up destroying everything you create. Eventually, you'll fake it for a while and all fall down. Because without the happiness inside you, you need what I call the adult toys. Reputation, fame, power, money. You see it all the time in conservation. And you go, I hate that guy. He's got that bit on the TV. That guy got the money for the grant. That guy got the reputation in the journal. And they end up fighting amongst each other. You watch social media. The vitriol that you see in social media is not between people destroying the planet and people trying to save it. It's between other people trying to save the planet fighting against each other. Because they don't, does that make sense? It's naturally their unhappiness comes out and destroys whatever they have inside themselves. So we have to reform ourselves, yeah? And that will naturally come out. Because often people say to me, "Oh, how do you keep going? You know, destruction is for us, seeing all this death and destruction, and you must. How do we keep going? I want hope. Give me some hope or something." And I said, "Look, I've got no hope, because hope comes with its partner, despair. Yeah, so the way to counter or to act in the world is to say, I've got this love in my heart. Does it make sense? I feel happy in myself, and I naturally want to express that. Does it make sense? It's not about hope, whatever. It's just about expressing what you feel inside yourself, and therefore you have unlimited energy. Does it make sense? To keep going, whether it's good or bad times, because it's naturally coming from yourself. Yeah? So you don't have these what I call conservation martyrs. Look at me, how wonderful I am because I'm saving the world, I'm saving the planet. I'm better than you. Does that make sense? This is the message, which is absolute bullshit. It's not true. Does that make sense? If I believe that doesn't make sense, I'd just be making the world a miserable place, and just trying to big note myself, and feel good about myself by positing in my mind that I'm better than somebody else. It's absolutely not true. Yeah? The way to do it is to love and express that love unconditionally with the world. But we have to express it in a way which is an intelligence. Does that make sense? Because indiscriminate charity causes more problems in the world than it creates. That's a natural thing. Because we not only have to have love, we have to intelligently apply that. It's two wings of the bird. You have to have the heart and the head for meaningful action in the world. Yeah? And so you have to have the knowledge to apply that in the right way. Now, we're talking about hope and despair, and one of the things that always comes up in talks is the human population going up, and let's give up because what are we going to do about it? And a lot of people say this, but it's actually not true. It's actually not true. Although the population continues to go up, the birth rate continues to go down. And the only reason it's going up in short term is because of young people who are still reproducing, but when they go up into the population will start to come down and come down reasonably dramatically. So we don't have a population problem. Yeah? Again, people say these things, but they don't understand, not population biologists, doesn't make sense. Yeah? So we don't have a population problem, at least in the long term. And even in the short term, there's more calories per person produced today than any other time in history. And so, we can solve this problem, does that make sense? We have a short period to do it. The population will go down, yeah? And hopefully there will be a change in the population. So, there's lots of these are all the reasons I could come up with as why we should care about orangutans. Animal rights, animal welfare, economic justice, because we're raping the developing nations to extract wealth from them. Indigenous rights, these rainforests are not empty, they're full of people, that they are being starved, displaced from their native forests. This is happening today, this is not 200 years ago in America or Australia. Women's rights, women are the most powerless, are disproportionately affected through the disruption. It's generational justice, we're not handing our planet over to our children, we're eating into their inheritance. Yeah. And we're destroying all the biodiversity. Yeah. And so we're destroying the planet for our children. And the recent evidence is even if you're very rich, you can't, it's not a good idea for you, to do this. Because the science is showing in highly uneven societies with lots of rich and lots of poor, right? The rich longevity and health is worse than in even societies. It obviously is better than the poor's, doesn't make sense. So if you're a rich person, you're better off moving to a country where everyone is relatively evenly, a nice bell curve of distribution of wealth. You actually do and live longer. So as the world is destroyed, makes sense, and the wealth gap is increasing, it's going to make, even for the the rich the grandchildren and children of the rich are going to be adversely affected by it. So it's not, there's no way of isolating ourselves from the rest of the planet. So in summary, it's not the environment versus the economy or wildlife versus people. Yeah? And I've also described poverty, wars going down. Yeah? And the current paradigm is becoming so dysfunctional, it's going to become more and more apparent and more obvious into the future. I give two examples of this. No one predicted this for the Soviet Union one day before it fell. It just got so ridiculous one day when you just got into the street and said, nah, we ain't going to have it anymore. It's just ridiculous. Communism was dead in one day. I don't think you see the reports in Hong Kong where I was brought up. You know, we don't know the end outcome, but they've kept on changing things slowly and slowly to take away the rights of people in Hong Kong. And eventually they all just stood in the street. Said, nah, this has gone too far, we're not going to take it anymore. And so the ridiculousness of the paradigm of us destroying our planet and destroying the future of our children is hopefully become more and more obvious that one day there will be a sudden snap. We're just going to have to change. And a lot of good reasons for that. And of course, the orangutan project, we need $20 million a year to do this, to set up these 5 to 8 complete ecosystems to save orangutans, elephants and tigers through the extinction crisis. So we are basically a $3 million a year organisation. It's a $20 million problem. That's why I do talks and books and everything. But it's quite achievable. We spend billions of dollars to find microscopic bacteria on Mars. Meanwhile, we're destroying our own planet. And persons who share our planet, such as orangutans, being slaughtered for no good reason. Yeah, so just a small fraction of that we can save them. You can just go to the Middle East for one day and why don't we just not kill anybody in the Middle East for one day? Tomorrow, start again. I'm not going to make any political decisions here. But for one day, we can save the entire species of orangutan, the rainforest, and which is causing 20 to 30% of the global warming on our planet. So it's achievable, but obviously it's a challenge. So that's my talk. I hope you enjoyed that somewhat unusual journey into our humanity, and I'm happy to take any questions for the next 10 minutes, and then after that, if you are so inclined, I'm selling my books there, and there's no author royalties, there's no publishing royalties, 100% goes to the cause to save orangutans. And and of course I'd love to invite you on this wonderful journey to save orangutans and the other beautiful beings that share our planet. Thank you.
When you say $20 million to save orangutans, are you talking about buying adjacent habitats? Is that the way that would work?
Yeah, no, very good question. And if anyone's really keenly interested, we have a strategic document on the website you can download, and it goes into the details. So what we're trying to do is we're piecing together now, and we want to get money to do more, is complete functioning ecosystems, so the right type, shape of forest, and with the right populations of orangutans and other endangered species, and protect it in order to take it through the extinction crisis. And how we would use that $20 million a year would shift. So in the beginning, it would be about obtaining the land, protecting it, and some reforestation, and then it would shift to community development, education. But what the really cool thing is, what we're discovering with one of the ecosystems we've been doing this for a while, is within 8 to 10 years we can get it to pay for itself. Through we're doing agriculture under rainforest, such as vanilla and dye called dragon blood, and high value stings bee honey, and so you have to set these up, and the plants have to mature. You have to train the local people, but we actually get where the local people get very rich, and we get enough money off the top of for that to protect the forest and keep it safe. And so the wonderful thing is, and all up, if we're going to do this whole plan on all the ecosystems we want to save, when I retire in 20 years' time, they will actually be supporting themselves. And so, which is going to be a really good outcome if we can get the funds to do that.
So you really depend on indigenous people within these habitats to keep it going?
Yeah, because it's not wildlife versus people. People think, oh, you kick the people out, we don't like people, we like animals. Not the case. We love all beings and we want to create a world that's good for everybody. And the Indonesian forest is not empty. It's got the orang member, which are hunter-gatherers. They've just got loincloths, both men and women, and they've got a matriarch society, and they're hunter-gatherers. And because the multinationals have taken all their land, they're starving. The children are starving. And so we want to protect enough land so that they can survive in their culture. And although culture is a fantastic way to adapt to an environment, it can't adapt very quickly, extremely quickly. This is why when economic, a more developed society comes in place, the culture becomes dysfunctional. Does that make sense? Because if you don't change the culture, when the environment changes, the culture becomes dysfunctional. But people in a culture can't change that quickly. And that's why if you go to Australian Aborigines or even American Indians, you probably find they're all drunk and dysfunctional and not often working in society, because their culture doesn't work anymore. And they haven't had the time, to make sense, to move their culture, to adapt to a different environment, because we never had to adapt that quickly in the past. We haven't had those dramatic changes. But yeah, and we're feeding the children, giving them breakfast and lunch and education, and we're going to give them all scholarships, so they can go all the way up to university if they want. And because the first thing we can do with local communities is agree on is we love your children. We both love your children, and we both want a future for them. And so, and of course, when we do the economic things, they get the lion's share of the profit. So they are invested, does that make sense? To protect the forest and protect the ecosystem, because we don't have to talk about altruistic things. It's a win-win situation, which is a wonderful thing about it. It's all a win-win situation. Yeah.
Do you currently have any of these projects in place?
Yes. The first one we have is Bukatikapulu. We have a joint company with WWF, Indonesia, and Frankfurt Zoological Society. And yeah, we're leasing these large concessions, and we're developing these. In the first couple of years, developing these agricultural systems under the rainforest canopy, which are totally sustainable forever. You can do it forever because it's not a monoculture. Yeah. And then I'm also spent a lot of time up in East Kalimantan with our friends, Central Orangutan Protection, and we've formed a company there to start leasing large blocks of land and working with the indigenous diet community to save a 288,000 hectare ecosystem up there. Of course, we want to do a lot more, and obviously I can talk all night about these things, but yeah.
How are you working with the Indonesian government and the Indonesian environmental ministries and all the Indonesian NGOs who are trying to move forward on conservation?
Well, we're working with everybody, if that makes sense. We're not against anybody, we're not fighting anybody, we're working with everybody. So we're working with the Indonesian government to change the land use designation from production forest to ecosystem restoration. And we're working with them to get the MOUs to manage and protect the forest. We're working with local companies asking to take specific action to give up tracts of rainforest. We need to pull together the ecosystems. Yeah, so we work with everybody, and we partner with all the bona fide local NGOs to affect meaningful change. Even though we're relatively small, we're the largest funder of the local orangutan conservationists.
What's the primary threat to the orangutan area that they're living in? What's the primary threat?
Primary threat is greed.
Yeah, but how does that get manifested?
Okay, the most poignant example, I want to get elected. You come to me and say, hey, I'm going to fund your election campaign. And I go, okay, but I got no money. And you go, don't worry, when you're elected, you give me that forest. You have the authority to do that. All right. I get elected, I give you the forest, you knock down the trees, and now average concession, you make $1 million straight up in your pocket. If you're a cowboy, you run off, but you're a businesswoman, you're smart. So you go, well, I'll invest some of that money back in, and in 3 years' time, if I say put a palm oil plantation, I'll make $3 million a year for the next 50, 60 years before the system collapses and leaves a wasteland. That's a good game. And who cares, because by the time that happened, I've moved to the Hamptons. No, it's true. They're buying up land in Canada, US. None of them want their children to live in Indonesia after they're through with it. Yeah. So that gives you example to me the dynamics of the threat. Yes?
Is poaching a problem, and if so, how do you deal with that?
Mm-hmm. Poaching is a problem, particularly for elephants, for the tusks, and tigers for everything on them. There is some poaching for orangutans, but mostly it's a byproduct of destroying their forests. The forests are destroyed. They are starving to death because they've got no food. They try to raid the village, or they raid the little palm oil plants, or which are planted, and they kill the agricultural pest. And then the babies, if the baby survives the killing, are sold on the illegal pet trade to get some fast cash. Well, I think, thank you for those questions. It's time, it's 7 o'clock, and but yeah, I'll be here for a little while to answer any more personal questions and stuff. And again, thank you for your time.